It was, of course, a massacre and a catastrophe by every measure. A crime with no equal. A terrorist attack that shook a nation and the global community. And this escalation, my dear respected brothers and sisters, of violence against Muslims is more than just a worrying trend. It's a realization of the real and imminent threat that poses our security and the security of every other vulnerable group in our society by the growth of the increasingly violent far right. They can no longer be labeled as lone psychopaths, as deranged or disgruntled. Rather, they are sane, and they're cruel, and they're calculating, and they're sadistic, and they are organized. They aim to galvanize their efforts with the proponents of their evil causes on a global scale. These people must be dealt with the full force of the law. And their threats should be taken seriously and not lightly. Their platforms should be targeted, and their supporters exposed and scandalized. When so-called social commentators can get away with calling immigrants and Muslims cockroaches, or a scourge, or a drain on resources, and other such derogatory remarks, what they do in fact is they dehumanize entire groups of people, dehumanizing them, therefore mandating their murder, justifying the targeting of those vulnerable groups, justifying the oppression of those groups, as they are not human, they're but cockroaches. And when politicians and sections of the media use the same inflammatory language as Islamophobes, as racists, as the terrorists, when they speak about Muslims or immigrants or other minorities, they further fuel the narrative which perpetuates the notion that Muslims are the other, that we are an exception to the normal law-abiding, well-meaning citizens of this great country and of the global community, in fact. That we are the threat, that we are the enemy within. These narratives fuel people of weak minds and weak resolves to target the vulnerable, to target the innocent. Where before, threats to blow up mosques using rocket launchers were considered as ramblings of a disgruntled, unemployed, unhappy, depressed individual. These threats now are real. Where before, instead of trying such an individual for terrorism or intention to commit an act of terrorism, they were let off lightly. Now there must be a rehaul, there must be a rethink, a reconsideration, a wake-up call for those in power, for those of influence, to know that these threats are no longer ramblings, but instead they are calculated plans to target vulnerable, innocent groups of people, and specifically the Muslim community. This massacre, my dear respected brothers and sisters, this callous attack, this terrorist attack was the result of complacency, was the result of trivializing the concerns of the Muslim community, of showing indifference towards their fears and their anxieties. At times, even a blatant show of support to Islamophobes by giving them a platform, a column in a newspaper, a meeting in the Houses of Parliament. And the calls and the cries for this to be investigated have fallen on deaf ears. Those who show indifference and those who take no action will at some point have blood on their hands. And this is what we fear.